Hey, Theo here, and here to talk to you about an upcoming tournament. That registration deadline is actually in one more day, although I might accept some late registrations. I wanted to talk about the tournament a little bit, the format, and show some of the tools that could be useful. The only tool that's really important is cardnum. Um, I'll put the link down in the video, and basically you can build your deck and have there's a play mode. You play other players through this app. So that's the main tool we're going to be using. However, this is a sealed collection tournament using cards from every expansion. So this would be almost impossible to do in real life, but because we're playing virtually, we can do this. And you can kind of see the pack distribution. There are some other minor adjustments over here. This is the tool that I'm actually going to be using to hand sets of cards to every player. Gets a different set of random cards based on their starting seed. This is kind of like a computer science-y term for maybe your redemption code or something. So if we just generate a set of random cards, we get cards from these packs, and you have to build your deck using just these cards, and we'll go from there, I guess. I think kind of the exciting thing about this format is it's great for new players to kind of get exposure to all these different sets if you haven't seen all the sets before, without being totally overwhelmed by needing to know every card in the game to figure out like what kind of strategies you should be worried about, what the meta strategies are, and things like that, which crop up a little bit more in Constructed, I think. I think it's a little more civilized for newer players, although certainly not without bloodshed. No, like really harsh shutdown strategies like 3 times snowstorms or 3 times maladies to deal with. And you only have to wrap your mind around the specific cards you're given in order to build your deck. Right. So you can kind of play around with the different seeds and see what the distributions of cards you might find here are. You won't need to use this at all unless you just want to check out kind of the distribution of seeds. I'm going to be using this to generate collections to send to players along with the seed. So you can come in here and maybe preview things if you want to, or you just copy your list into the cardnum interface, and you can kind of preview the cards in here too. So let's see. So this goes down, and there's a different section for resources and for hazards, which correspond to the different sections you'd kind of primarily want to start cards in when you're building your deck. What I do is I typically load stuff in here and then kind of cut stuff away in the cardnum interface. But some people pull out the cards in real life and do it that way. The card preview over here hasn't been working in some of the new browser updates. One workaround is change browsers. Firefox is working still. You can come over to cardnum and just preview cards over here, or you can also save the generator website locally to your machine, and then it should still, the image preview should work then. Anyway, about the pack distribution, I tried to make it so that hero and minion are pretty closely balanced. We might, we did this last year, and I've made some adjustments. I think I'm getting closer, and it's probably not perfect yet, but it's pretty close, and I think that encourages kind of a diversity of decks in the environment of opponents that you'll play against, and I think that's really exciting for sealed as well. Doesn't normally happen in sealed. And you can even play as a fallen wizard, although there are some caveats on that. I encourage you to see the details in the longer description on the Council of Elrond forums, which I'll provide a link for in the description below. Let's see what else to say about the format. Decks need to be constructed according to 2 deck length game rules. That's different than the traditional sealed using 1 deck length games, but you have a lot more cards than in normal sealed because you don't have to pay for them. There's also a very minor update into the tournament scoring rules, which is basically multiplied by 1.5 times the Council of Lorien rules, but there's some different thresholds. It's just something to be aware of if you've played in a tournament before. If you haven't, then the idea is basically the difference between you and your opponent's marshalling points will dictate how well you do in a tournament. So you always have some incentive to try to eke out as much as you can, even if you know you're going to lose. You could still maybe bump up how much you lose by a little bit more, and still have a reason to continue the game. Oh yeah, there's one more thing. So so you have all these cards from different expansions, and that means you could build a hero deck, you could build a minion deck, you could maybe even build some fallen wizard decks. You could build Balrog if you want to. The other modifications to the tournament points is you get a bonus multiplier if you kind of have diverse decks throughout the tournament. And that's just to kind of incentivize people to try different things. If you were kind of on the fence about trying something new and you thought it looked good, but you weren't really sure, maybe without this multiplier, you'd be like, oh, it might be good, but I'm not sure, so I'm not going to risk it. And now this is just to try to kind of bump people over that edge, to try different things. A lot of people don't care about the tournament points at all, and it's just to kind of support the theme of wanting to show mastery of all these different cards from all these different expansions in the sealed environment. So the Firefox works for this. Let's hop over to so if you try to do this on Chrome, another tool though is this deck checker, and this is to make sure that if you load your cards that were available to you into the deck, into the checker here. Oh, it didn't actually. Oh, bummer. It didn't actually copy over the ones that weren't hazards. Okay. Well, I guess I have to copy it over in 3 parts. It doesn't matter what the order is. It's just checking. The deck checker is just to make sure that the deck that you built in cardnum is actually only using these cards. Just these cards, although which version of a reprinted card, it doesn't matter. So if where's my cardnum deck? Let's get out of that, and we can go see this other deck that I built. Oh boy, very slow. All right, we go see this other deck I built. We can copy over all these resources and all these hazards and so on and so forth. You copy them all over there, and we can say check, and it'll say, oh, this came from an entirely different collection, so your deck is totally not legal. And you're like, oh, darn. Okay, so, but in general, it'll tell you, hopefully, you'll have no red warnings in here, except for, with one exception, you are allowed to have one additional avatar that you didn't have in your collection in your deck. So you can have one line that says you have a avatar character in your deck. Avatar character only. One in your deck that was not in your collection. Okay, cool. So that's another cool tool that we have available new this year. Another fun tool is that for this deck diversity thing, here's the same idea. We can copy over kind of let's go back to like some of my decks from last year. Right, so here I have some decks from last year. I made fallen decks and minion decks and hero versus minion decks, hero versus hero decks, and so on. If we just look at kind of the hero versus minion and minion, hero versus hero and hero versus minion versus hero, we can kind of see how similar are these decks. I'm only going to do the resources for now. Maybe I should do a fallen deck. This was minion versus hero, and I made a hero fallen versus hero. I'm just going to, again, copy only the resources out. And we can check how similar were these decks. And here, this is saying, well, if my deck was only made of resources, there would be a 74% distinctness, and this would qualify me for the extra bonus for using a different deck, the extra tournament point bonus that I described before. So this is a tool you can use to make sure that your deck, when you're trying to build a unique deck that's different to get an increase in your bonus, you can make sure that it's different enough from all of your other decks to qualify you for that bonus. All right, cool. Let's see what else to say about this format. Excited to have new players, veteran players, anyone. I think using cardnum at least once before is useful, but you have a couple weeks. People on the Discord channels are often available and very excited to help people orient to the tool to get more people playing online. This isn't the only tournament this year. We're gonna have we already had one or two earlier this year, and there's gonna be at least a couple more coming up. Look forward to seeing any new faces joining us for having some fun games. All right.